What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for another match preview stream. As there's a quick turnaround, we play Nottingham Forest at home Sunday 6 p.m. kickoff, which promises to be a good game of football. We need to do that double over Nottingham Forest. We need to put Nuno to bed as well. Nuno's first return to Tottenham since his sacking, what was it, 2 years ago now? 3 years ago? 2021. Wow, a long time ago now. It seems only yesterday that Nuno was in the dugout at Tottenham Hotspur. But the running order today is we're going to speak to our favourite Nottingham Forest fan, Wolfie from Forest Fan TV, then go into predicted lineup and then a match preview as well. But without further ado, let's bring on Wolfie from Forest Fan TV. Wolfie, welcome back. How you doing, my friend?
Afternoon, boys. I'm good. How you two doing?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. You know, a lot has changed since we last spoke. Nuno is now your manager. It was Cooper's last game when we did speak. I think it was all the way back in, when was it? November? When was it?
It'd have been
early
December time,
wasn't
wouldn't it?
Yeah, December time.
Brennan Johnson couldn't hit a barn door.
Yeah, Brennan Johnson's firing on all cylinders at the moment. But
I did tell you, he's a slow burner. That's what he did for us last season. Once the World Cup was out of the way, he started playing well, and he's been pretty good for you guys as of late.
Yeah, I'm loving Brennan Johnson, to be honest with you. And but talk to me about what's changed since Nuno's come in and Steve Cooper lost his job, because obviously we've been in the pleasure of having Nuno ourselves in the hot seat, and a lot of Spurs, I would probably say 100% of Spurs fans weren't happy when Nuno was in the hot seat at Spurs. But tell us about your experiences with Nuno.
It's interesting because when Cooper went, and thank you, I guess, because he needed to go. I think your game was the final one that pushed him over the edge. But when Nuno was announced, when I was speaking to Spurs mates and versus Wolves mates, it was yin and yang. What the kind of feel was about Nuno. Nuno for Wolves was treated like he was almost Cooper for Forest. There was a real connection between him and the fans. But from the Spurs people, it's just like, as you said, 100% were like, no, it was some of the worst times we saw. I was like, but you were top of the league after a couple of games. You beat Man City. Yeah, it didn't work. It didn't work. And it was like, moved on. But it's been a mixed bag. We've seen the Nuno of Wolves and we've seen the Nuno of Spurs, if you like, because he came in with a bit of a bang. We lost the first game to Bournemouth, but that was because the ref was on the books with that Willy Bolly sending off, which was never a sending off. But then we went and beat Newcastle, we went and beat Manchester United, and things were looking on the up. And then we got hit with the PSR charges, and literally since then he's turned into the Spurs manager that you guys had rather than the Wolves manager. And we were seeing signs of more and more defensive football coming in, where he was very, very aggressive in the first few games. And it's not until Fulham this week where we've suddenly seen that handbrake released, and the Nuno that joined Forest at the start is now showing his teeth again. And that performance against Fulham this week was, especially the first half, was the best I've seen in the Premier League since we've been back. It was really impressive.
In terms of those PSR charges, obviously, as a Forest fan, you're not going to be happy about them. But what was the reaction amongst a lot of the Forest fans to them? Because obviously at Everton, they hold up the placard saying corruption, and they're not happy about it. Is it a similar feeling amongst Forest fans? Or is there a general acceptance of it?
It's a mixed bag. I mean, there's no Forest fan that will turn around and say to you, we didn't breach. We breached, yeah? But our gripe with it is it's not a level playing field. The majority of the teams in the Premier League could overspend, should I say, by 105 million. We could only overspend by 61 million. We came with a squad into the Premier League. Remember, we weren't expecting to go up that season. We were bottom of the Championship. We came into the Premier League with a squad that was worth 12 million. Everything, altogether 12 million. That was it. So we had to spend and build up. Some will say we went too much and what have you. But it's the thing that bugs me is when Norwich come up and they just come straight back down because they're just there for the parachute payments. Everyone has a go at them saying, well, why are they coming up if they don't bother? But when a team comes up and tries to compete, Suddenly it's like, oh, why did you buy 6 million players? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? It's like no one's ever happy with whatever a team comes up and does. There's always the opposite agenda to it. So yeah, I was annoyed that we got the points, mainly because I don't think the rules are fair and allowing for a level playing field. Like, how can you go into a league where only 3 teams are expecting to win it and the other 17 teams have, 17th for 5 teams is winning the league, finishing 4th is winning the league. You should really have 15 teams. If we're going to call this the most competitive and best league in the world, surely you want more than 3 teams being really competing for the title, So it's just not a level playing field. And they're getting rid of the rules in the summer anyway because they're not fit for purpose. And they've never given penalty points to a breach in finance before Everton and Forest. So are you telling me Man City sitting there with 115 charges? Why hasn't that been dealt with? So that's my gripes.
I understand, but what do you say to the argument, that Forest have kind of spent haphazardly? They haven't really spent smartly, and maybe if they were a bit smarter with their spending, they wouldn't be in this position. Because you said you signed a lot of players, a lot of them haven't worked out, and I think I was assuming last season you signed a lot, and then this season again you went on another spending spree. Like, has all the business been smart?
It's not all been smart, but what business ever is? Look how much. Look at just give you a random example. Didn't West Ham buy, what was that Italian striker last season called?
Scamacca.
Yeah,
Scamacca. 35 million. No one's talking about that money that they wasted on him. Of course, every team buys duds. That's how it's going to be. The only thing is, it was accelerated with Forest. Look, we shouldn't have brought 30 players last year. There's no two ways about it. There are players that we bought that to this day have never played for Forest.
That's
that's the ones that I would agree with you guys on. Yeah. And there are players that we bought that have already been sold on who never played for Forest. Yeah. So it's those are the ones where it was stupid. But we did need, I would have said if you'd got 15, that would have made more sense to bulk out a squad because we had no squad. That was the thing with it. But yeah, everyone has dud signings. But my counter argument would be, okay, well, had we not signed these players, we wouldn't have unearthed a Murillo. We wouldn't have unearthed, an Omar Bamadeli now coming through, a Danilo. These kind of players, some of them that do succeed, will be the ones that kick on that Forest will sell for a huge profit going forward. So yes, it's haphazard, but there is a little bit of logic behind it, but very, very deeply hidden behind it.
Yeah, for me, it just seemed like a complete scattergun approach, like just signing anyone and everyone that they can sign. And when you've got these kind of laws in place, surely you've got to target these signings with precision instead of just going all over the place and signing players who 2 years down the line haven't even had an appearance for Nottingham Forest. I think it's crazy to me when you know what the laws are, and I think it's pretty careless from the chairman. It
is, but when you say that, had we sold you Brennan Johnson 2 months earlier, we wouldn't have breached. So the margins are fine. The margins are fine. So they were anticipating that Jono would have gone earlier. I mean, he could have gone earlier. We had offers from Brentford for 30 million. But I mean, who wants to play for
Atletico Madrid
Brentford?
apparently as well.
Atletico Madrid as well, yeah. That kind of felt a weird offer. It was like an email offer that Forest countered back with 65 million. And it's like, okay. But, so it's weird. And then they never responded again, apparently. So, but, it's just weird that when we're talking that Forest breach by 34 million, it sounds like a big number, but that's, 2/3 of the Jono fee. And had that happened a bit earlier on, then we wouldn't be having this conversation on it. And at the end of the day, what happened was Forest stayed up. So how silly the approach looked, it worked. We were able to stay up. Look at Sheffield this season. They've come up, done nothing. They're going straight back down. Yeah. At least Luton are giving it a go. Okay, they're probably the exception to it. They're probably still going down. And Burnley have spent a lot. And no one's talking about how much Burnley have spent either. And they're going back down. So this is Premier League.
Yeah, it's true. I think Burnley are actually giving themselves a bit of a fighting chance, particularly if they get points this weekend. But what's the story with Nottingham Forest now, and in terms of your summer business this summer? How are you going to be able to spend? Do you need to bring in a certain amount before All right, sorry about that, guys. We are back. Just another technical difficulty. But Wolfie, I was saying, where does this leave you in terms of Nottingham Forest's summer business? Do you need to bring in a certain amount before you can spend again?
Yeah, I think you're going to play a part in it from what I'm hearing. But I think what we're going to see isn't just going to be Forest. It's going to be the whole Premier League. You're going to see this 30th of June deadline where loads of teams need to sell players because that's when the PSR financial year closes. And then from the 1st of July, you're going to see Forest start spending again because we will have 105 in terms of what we can spend, because this would be our 3rd year, assuming we stay up. So, sorry, 1 sec.
It's all right.
Bloody kids upstairs. But the one that's going to be interesting is Morgan Gibbs-White, because you guys apparently are linked with him yet again. I've seen so many links with him. And Levy wants to get a cut price deal on him and try and get him in before the 30th of June, knowing that Forest are likely to breach this summer if we don't sell someone before the 30th of June. So I think Morgan Gibbs-White is going to be interesting, to say the least, and what you do with him.
Yeah, I think he's a player I've been massively impressed with. I do wonder, where do you think he would fit in at Spurs? Obviously, we have Maddison here. Do you see him as like more of a number 10, or do you see him as very versatile? Maybe he can play a box-to-box kind of role. Like, if you were to sign him, where do you think he would fit in at Spurs?
Well, first I'd say don't play him wide. That was Cooper's mistake in the early part of the season. He needs to influence the game from the middle. His most natural position is the 10. But he's also played as an 8 or as a quarterback, if you like, sometimes for Forest. He's really, really talented. Like, it's oozing out of him. I think he will be better than Maddison, and he's younger than Maddison as well. Maddison, for me, sometimes can look a little weak on the ball, and sometimes is a bit injury prone. MGW is 99% of the time fit and ready to go. And he works so hard tracking back. So as good as he is going forward, he puts the hard yards in getting back. So I personally like him as a 10. At the moment, there is a debate in the Forest fan base whether or not he should be brought in as an 8 to allow Gio Reyna to come in as a 10, because we haven't seen much of him. It's almost like Morgan Gibbs-White is keeping... Yeah, exactly. So did we. So what we're thinking might happen at some stage will be that Morgan Gibbs-White plays in the 8, which he did as a for one half against Crystal Palace the other week, and then Reyna came in as the 10, and it looked quite balanced. But the one thing I will say, do not put him on corners. He's the worst corner taker ever. He hits that first man guaranteed every single time. But on the ball, unbelievable, natural talent. But he will cost you more than Brennan. As much as Levy will try and put a deal together, he's way more talented than Brennan.
Interesting. Talking about Brennan, obviously you mentioned it at the beginning of the call, but how do you feel like he's developed at Tottenham? When you watch him, do you feel like he's a better player than he was at Forest? Do you see similarities? He seems to be a player at Tottenham recently who's getting a lot more assists than he was at Forest. At Forest, he was much more of a goal scorer. I think he scored over 10 goals last season. Now I think he's got 5 goals, 7 assists. So what do you make of his development at Tottenham?
I think it's as far as I thought it would go, where he would take a little bit of time to settle in, because at Forest he was the big name, and then coming into Spurs, obviously he's surrounded by likes of Son, Maddison, etc. Some names that he would look up to. Whenever I hear him talking about Son, you can see that glint in his eyes. It's almost like, I'm playing with a boyhood hero, or this is a footballer that I look up to, kind of thing. So I think that took him a little time to get past, and then understanding how Postecoglou wants him to play. At Forest, it was very much focused about ball in over the top, because we were used to giving the opponent space in their half. So they'd be pushing up on us in our low block formation under Cooper. Jono would have lots of space to work with in the opponent's half. So we were seeing a lot of Hollywood balls coming into him. So for me, that's something he had to develop, because you would have the opposite, where you're pressing higher on teams. He's not going to have as much space to work into. The biggest development I've seen with him is his footballing IQ at getting into the box, so inverting in, a bit like the goal he got in your previous game. That's the development that he didn't have at Forest. So sniffing the opportunity and anticipating that position. I thought he did really well because the ball was almost played behind him and he had to adjust his body back to get into position. That's what he didn't have that at Forest. His finishing, I think, is better at Forest, but I still think you haven't even seen the best of him yet. I still think there's a long way to go with him, and he's just going to keep on developing. But there was a section of the Spurs fan base that was really impatient with him at the start, man. He was getting dog's abuse at the start. And I just think the fact that Postecoglou's been patient with him, brought him in at the right times, and he's keeping Kulusevski out. In my opinion, right now, his form's better than Kulusevski's. And when you guys played us at the City Ground, Kulusevski was your star man for that night. He really ran the show. So it kind of shows you how form switches throughout the season.
Yeah. Let's get down to business, though. Let's talk about the game this weekend. 6 o'clock kickoff on Sunday at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. How do you feel that Nottingham Forest will come to this game and set up on the back of a really good win, 3-1 on the weekend?
Well, I'm going to say off the bat, we're going to win. I'll tell you boys that now, right? So, you're going to need to find your Champions League points from somewhere else. You're going to play into our hands. That's what's going to happen. You're going to push up high like you do. I think Elanga's going to be extremely important in this game. I think with Udogie, I always get his name. Is that how you meant to pronounce it?
Yeah, that's how you say it.
Yeah,
Spot on first time, Wolfie.
Okay, cool. I think he's really good going forward, but can be a little sus going back. But if Van de Ven covers that side, you might be okay because Elanga's lightning. Now, I have my own issues with Elanga, don't get me wrong. But I just think you may play into our hands and overcommit too many men forward and leave us with space on the counter-attack. And I think Nuno's going to want to prove a point to you guys. Nuno's got you next, and then he's got his former club after that, Wolves, back-to-back. So it's going to be an interesting week for Nuno. And I don't think my biggest gripe with Spurs at the moment, well, I say gripe, but my biggest critique of Spurs is I just feel you don't want to shoot. Like, you're dancing the ball around too much. And it really just feels like Jono's the only one really trying to push into position and trying to score or create an assist. And I just think, just shoot, man. Just shoot. Son, I'm so used to seeing him cut in edge of the box, just finesse it into the top bins. He's not doing that. I'm not saying he's been playing bad, but I'm a little puzzled as to why it's not happening with Spurs in terms of just shoot. Just play free-flowing. Take the handbrake off. If you miss, you miss, but at least take your shots. And that, for me, if you don't do that, that could cost you the game. You'll create chances against Forest. We're crap at corners, at defending them and taking them. But I feel like Spurs are currently being tagged after that Everton game, the way they got into Vicario. I think Nuno will have a look at that. I thought the corner he gave away against West Ham was really weak, poorly marked. So I think Nuno will be having a look at set plays against you, but I'm not too hopeful on that because we're rubbish at set plays at both ends. But yeah, I am quite confident that we're going to win this one because I think we're 2 wins away from full safety, even with the points deduction. But yeah, I'd say 3-1 Forest.
Just 2 wins. And I remember even recently, Forest gave Liverpool a really good game. I know it was at the City Ground, but Liverpool had to wait till the last pretty much kick of the game to win that one. I want to ask you actually about the goalkeeper situation because last time we played, Matt Turner was in goal and he was a big reason why Spurs won that game.
The reason.
Pretty much, yeah. He was very suspect for both goals, I think it's fair to say. Yeah. You've now got a new goalkeeper and you think he's a much better option than Matt Turner?
So with Matt Sells that we've got now, what the best compliment I can give him is that I hardly notice him. And that's what I want from a goalkeeper. I don't want to notice them. Matt Turner, with him, you just, every time he got the ball, you're nervous. And it's not just you that's nervous, the crowd's nervous, and the defense is nervous because he's nervous as well. He just ends up punting the ball out of field if we're lucky, or doing what he did against you guys. He then does it against Man U the week after, then against Arsenal. Enough was enough. With Sells, he's not the greatest goalkeeper. He's not going to go down in the history books, but he's so consistently bland It's the best way I can describe him. He's made a couple of good saves, don't get me wrong. He saved us in the Palace game and what have you. But I'm more than happy with him right now because he's not Turner, basically.
You know, Spurs have struggled quite a lot this year playing against low blocks, specifically three at the backs. And, you know, Nuno is quite famous for his three at the backs, but hasn't really been playing that on a week-to-week basis at Forest. Do you think there's an opportunity for him to switch up and go three at the back to stifle Spurs a bit this weekend?
No chance. He's 100% going for it at the back. And I quite like that about him. As you guys said, I think we've talked about it before. At Wolves, he was always a three at the back kind of guy. And then at Spurs, he switched. I think that was the first. Well, he played it in Valencia as well. And then at Spurs, he reverted back to the 4-back, 4-2-3-1. He did that at Saudi. And when he came to Forest, I thought he would start with the 3. He didn't. He's gone 4. And I like that because he's almost said, this is my identity. This is the formation I want to play. I'm going to get the players who will fit into my style to play in there. Because I thought the biggest chance, the biggest changes, if he was going to do it, was when we went away to Newcastle. I thought potentially he could have gone a 3 at the back there. And when we played Arsenal at home, and then when we played, who was it the other week? Liverpool. I thought if he was going to do it, he'd do it in those matches, but he hasn't. So he's just stuck with that. Within the game, occasionally he has changed it, but it's looked worse when he has. So I don't think he will. I think it'll be a 4-2-3-1.
And obviously Chris Wood's in a lot of form, isn't he? He's scoring goals. I think he's 10 Premier League goals this season. And
11, mate. 11
Premier League goals. After he scored a hat trick against Newcastle, didn't he? And then scored in midweek. Did he score midweek as well?
He did.
I thought that header. When was it? I think it was against Palace. That outrageous header. I thought that header did not get enough credit. I thought it was outrageous. Do you think he's obviously is Awioni still injured? Because I was a massive fan of Awioni, but obviously Wood has now got that place at the moment.
Yeah, Awoni's out till end of April from last updates we've heard. Look, Chris Wood, I was his biggest critic, full stop. When we bought him in for 15 million plus 4 million loan fee, I was fully against it. I thought, he was a 31-year-old back then. But Nuno needs to be given a lot of credit. And Chris Wood, obviously, for what he's done. Since Nuno came in, he's used him how he used Jimenez at Wolves. He's fitted into that Nuno style. Nuno never really needs a fast, pacey striker as his number 9. And that's why it felt like Chris Wood would fit in with Nuno. And he's just so confident right now. He's shooting from anywhere. He scored, 25-yarder against Fulham the other day. I didn't know he had that in his locker. That header, if Haaland had scored that header, the one you're talking about against Fulham, they'd still be talking about it on Sky Sports News now. So he's just in form. I think he scored 8 in his last 9 or 7 in his last 8, one of those two. So he's in red hot form. I expect him to get a goal. I expect him to get a goal on Sunday. And he's just the kind of striker he's dropping in between the lines. So it's quite hard to pick him up. He hasn't got the pace, but sometimes the defense don't know if they should drop in on him or should it be the midfield covering him. So he could cause you some problems. But we've got our front 4 right now is humming really nicely. Callum Hudson-Odoi for me is the one you want to worry about. He's fully confident, fully in form. He scored again against Fulham. Morgan Gibbs-White, Elanga, and Wood. It's just what Nuno does with the 6 and the 8 for me. That's where he's probably got his selection headaches.
I'm trying to work this out, how this is even possible, but how the hell has Nuno got more of a tune out of Chris Wood than Harry Kane when he was at Spurs? I mean, he couldn't get Harry Kane to hit a barn door when he was at Spurs.
You know what? Kane should be the striker that suits Nuno's style even more so.
Yeah.
Because Kane's never been blessed with pure pace. And he would have suited that system quite well. I just think at the time, I'm trying to think who was he playing wide at the time for you guys?
Son and Bergwijn, I think.
Son and yeah.
Because I think that's what it was, because he likes pacey wingers. Yeah. And Son being Son maybe was causing the imbalance in there. I don't know, but you're right. Kane should have been his dream style of striker to play with, yeah.
Yeah.
You should have given him more time.
Should we give Nuno more time? Yeah,
I don't think so. Conte comes in and we get Champions League football by the end of the season.
Yeah, and then you're asleep the season after it with the boring football he was playing.
Now we've got Big Ange Postecoglou.
Give it a few months, Wolfie. I'm sure you'll be singing the same tune.
You mentioned 3-1, Wolfie. You sticking with it? You're not really going 3-1 to Nottingham Forest at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, are you?
No, seriously, boys. Well, you know the rivalry with my brother. That's the one thing, him being a Spurs fan. But I just feel that win against Fulham was huge for Forest. We've been knocking on the door. We've been getting loads of BS decisions against us with VAR and refs. I mean, you talked about that Liverpool one where the drop ball was done incorrectly by the ref. We've had penalties not going for us. And then what's happened is this PSR being given the 4 points is almost the best thing that happened to us because we can just get on with the football. So similarly, if you look back at what happened with Everton when they got given initially their 10 points, I think they lost their first game to Man U and then they went on a 4-game winning streak. And I kind of just see that with Forest, that it's done. We're moving on. We know what our end goal is now. We need maybe 2 wins and a draw to guarantee our position next season, and we will build on that from the summer. So I'd say just get it at Spurs, beat Wolves, his 2 former teams back to back. And I just think the style you play will suit us. This isn't the type of team you want to come against. I saw you guys struggling against Sheffield United earlier on in the season, scoring 2 late goals to win it. Okay, it was early on in the season. Luton, you bombarded them, but they snuck a lead against you, and then yes, you did turn it around. West Ham, probably a similar style to Nuno. You struggled with West Ham. I don't think this is an easy game for Spurs. I really don't. And I just remember us always beating you back when I was a kid in the Premier League back then. So I just think we're going back to that, boys. We've got to. We haven't beaten you yet since we've been back.
I think Spurs are a bit a different team now than we were in the 90s. Let's be real.
The Spurs are still Spursy, boys. Don't try and hide from it. You've still got that Spursiness about you. And this is about the time of year you do some Spursy stuff as well, right? So I'm taking that into account.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Don't talk about Spursy when you've got the ultimate Spursy manager of Nuno in charge. But Wolfie, always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for giving your insights into Forest for us. Do you want to let the people know where they can find you? And if you do like Wolfie, a lot of people in the comments saying Ange Postecoglou lookalikes.
I knew you were going to say that.
So if you want Ange Postecoglou talking about Forest, you know where to find him, and tell him where you can find him.
Look, right, I do have a quarter Greek in me, right? So that must be the same quarter Greek as Ange, right? And he's a good-looking bloke, that Ange, a little older. But yeah, at Forest Fan TV on YouTube, come show us some love. We'll be talking about the Spurs game, pretty much building up to that. And yeah, I think we're 18 subscribers away from 18K. So if there's some charity going from your viewers, we'll take it. Go
give Wolfie some subscribers. Come on, guys.
But I can tell you what, you ain't beating us this weekend, though. That's for sure.
Only if we win.
Are you that confident? I love the cockiness. I've been getting it from my brother. Are you
cockiness.
Serious?
You've been coming on here and saying Forest are going to win 3-1.
I don't. It's not like we're playing Man City. I don't think it's out the realms of possibility. You lost to Fulham 3-0. Yeah, we just smashed Fulham. Come on, let's use some logic behind this.
You're 17th though.
We're in a false position. We've had points deducted.
If you add the points back, where you got 1 place maybe?
Oh, would be a point ahead of you.
A point ahead of us, yeah.
Big up, Wolfie. Always good to talk to you, my friend. Thank you for coming on, and we'll see you. Maybe we'll have a run through of this after the game as well.
Let's do it. Once we've beaten you 3-1. Remember that stuff.
See you later, man.
See you later,
Wolfie.
The audacity to come and say Nottingham Forest are going to be Spurs 3 goals to 1.
I think he makes some good points in terms of I don't think it's going to be an easy game for us.
Yeah, look, I agree. I don't think it's going to be easy, but to say 3-1 to Nottingham Forest, there's got to be some sort of delusion there.
Well, yeah. Well, look, we could have egg on our faces after the weekend.
So could he. But that's the swings and roundabouts of football, isn't it? But let's get in to the predicted lineup. Tottenham against Nottingham Forest this weekend at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Ange has been speaking in the press conference. So what is the team news?
Yeah, so Richarlison has a little niggle in his knee, apparently. Apparently it's something too serious. He's going to be available for the Newcastle game, Ange said, but he is unavailable this weekend. They said they want to give him a rest. We fully gets over that problem. So clearly it's something he's still suffering with. The long-term absentees, Solomon, Sessegnon and Forster still remain out.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into...
And actually said unlikely to be seen again this season.
Wow, yeah. Expected. But let's get in to the lineup. 4-3-3 as per usual. In goal will be Vicario.
Yeah, no surprises. Hopefully, we're not conceding any more goals from set pieces this weekend. But Chris Wood, big aerial threat, so Vicario could have a lot to deal with from that front.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear what Wolfie was saying, isn't it? They're really poor at defending and attacking set pieces. Just knowing our luck and how poor we are at attacking and defending set pieces, they'll get one on the weekend. But let's hope Vicario does stay strong. Right back, we are going for Pedro Porro.
Yeah, and he's going to be up against a very informed winger at the moment in Hudson-Odoi, who can be a very tricky winger in his day, really good at dribbling, really quick. He's one of those wingers where when he's off his game, he's like, you barely know he's there. But when he's on it and he's running at you, all of a sudden it can be like you're playing one of the better wingers in the league all of a sudden. So it depends what kind of Hudson-Odoi turns up. Depends how difficult a day Porro's going to have. I feel bad for Porro because Emerson's not really up to it. He never gets a rest, and obviously he's going to have to play 90 minutes in midweek, and he's going to have to play 90 minutes again on Sunday. But I'm sure he's up to it.
Yeah, he's still played a lot less games than maybe Spurs should have played this season. But in terms of Callum Hudson-Odoi, all you have to do is go back to his time in the Chelsea academy and maybe the narrative surrounding him. They thought he was going to be, one of the big things to come out of the academy, and it just hasn't gone right for him. There was Bayern Munich that were in for him at one point. Who did he end up going to in Germany? Was it Leverkusen?
Yeah, and
he went to Leverkusen, didn't really do well. He's been in and out of loans, hasn't really done well. And in terms of the talent that he actually has, I mean, he should be on a fully fledging career by now, where he's just about having a few good games at Nottingham Forest.
100%. This might be the best form of his career. That's how inconsistent he's been. And he's I think last few games, he got a goal last game. Then a few games ago, he scored in back-to-back games. But other than that, he still even now lacks consistency. But when he's hot, he's hot.
Yeah. Right centre-back, Cuti Romero, player that is very much on form at the moment.
Yeah, had a brilliant game, I thought, against West Ham in midweek. Chris was obviously a big physical threat, so he's going to have to make sure that he's dealing with that. I thought they dealt with Antonio fairly well, apart from that one chance Antonio got late in the game. But I'm sure Romero will be able to sort him out.
Yeah, left centre-back Mickey van der Ven. And they've got some pacey attackers, some pacey wingers, so van der Ven might be having to be called into action in this one.
Yeah, and I think I saw a tweet the other day from someone saying Van der Ven's passing, it is not as expansive compared to like someone Romero. I do think that is true, and I do think sometimes clubs are starting to realise that when they just allow Van der Ven to have the ball, he's not going to be able to pick out passes like Romero does. Not to say he gives it away, but he doesn't really progress up the pitch like Romero does. So that's something he's got to work on. But obviously his recoveries are ridiculous, and with players like Elanga, who are a very big threat on the counter. I remember him giving Liverpool a lot of problems at the City Ground a few weeks ago. So he's going to have to be on watch for that.
And then left back is obviously going to be Destiny Udogie. And if this is the back four, which most likely will be, unbeaten back four.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure, or I'm hoping it'll stay that way, and then some, I hope. Udogie, I thought, in recent weeks, maybe hasn't been at his absolute best. I thought against Luton he struggled quite a bit, albeit against West Ham, I thought he was much better. But Elanga is a threat, and when he gets one-on-one with you, he's very difficult to deal with, and especially when you let him get in behind, he can be difficult to deal with. So he's got to watch out for Elanga.
Yep, so that's the standard back four. In the number 6 position, we're going to go for Yves Bissouma, who I thought put in his best display probably since those first 10 games of the season up against West Ham last week.
Yeah, and it's going to be a difficult game, this one as well, because Forest have some very physical central midfielders. Yates is very combative. When they've got Dominguez as well, who's quite good technically. Could potentially play Danilo in there as well, who's a good ball carrier. So he's going to have to be at his confident best just to physically dominate this Forest team. And I think if he can play as he did on Tuesday, that'll be a long way to us maintaining control here.
Number 8, we're going to look at Pape Matar Sarr to return to the starting lineup in the expense of Rodrigo Bentancur.
Yeah, and I think that is probably the right move. Obviously, Bentancur had a 70 minutes on Tuesday. I thought he played fairly well for the majority, albeit there were some moments where he could have cost us. I do think Sarr at the moment is the player more in form. I thought he had a decent cameo when he came on, and he's going to be an important player here.
Yeah, and alongside them, we're going to have James Maddison, who I'd like to really see strut his stuff this game and have a top performance, because we haven't seen that in a while.
Yeah, and I think there have been people calling for Lo Celso to come into this game after Maddison got hauled off after 65 or 70 minutes on in midweek against West Ham. I do think we're going to persist with him. I still think, as much as he's not at his best, I still think he's providing some good stuff for the team, and let's hope he can. His performances can start going in the right direction in this one.
With the way that Nottingham Forest set up, would you not maybe prefer to see maybe 2 attacking midfielders start in that midfield?
Yeah, I would, to be honest. I think if we do that, as long as those midfielders are not neglecting their defensive responsibilities, then I think it is the right thing to do, because it's going to be a lot harder for Forest to contain our attacking play if Spurs can play with a kind of 2 number 10s.
I would really like to see Maddison alongside either Giovanni or Kulu. I mean, Kulu didn't do himself any favours coming on in the West Ham game, but maybe Giovanni deserves it.
Yeah, I would be open to that.
Right-hand side of the attack, we're going to go for Brennan Johnson against his old side. Last time out against Nottingham Forest, he got taken off after 25 minutes with a head injury. So I'm sure he'll be bang up for this one.
Yeah, and he's a player in form. Obviously, there was a bit of a concern about him being injured, but Ange said he's absolutely fine and he's going to be available for this one. And with the form he's in, and considering last game he started and scored within 5 minutes, obviously he has to start. And I was going to say he probably knows some of these Forest players well, but I'm not sure if he does. The team has changed so much. So, yeah, it's going to be very important that he's stretching the play and he keeps playing like he has been recently, because he's been a breath of fresh air in recent weeks.
Yeah, up front, obviously going to be Heung-min Son with Richarlison now injured. That takes away the choice from Ange to maybe put him at left wing, but Son at number 9.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of criticism for Son after the midweek. A lot of people calling for him to not play number 9 anymore. So people saying he can't play that position. I look at it very differently. I think he can do it. I think there are some games like against West Ham where it is a bit more of a struggle and doesn't really suit his game. But I think he's such a quality player. He can make it work in a lot of situations. Yeah, sometimes he has an off day, like in midweek, and it just wasn't his day. But even though Forest play a low block, he still finds moments to use his quality, and I'm sure he'll do it on the weekend.
The record speaks for itself, doesn't he? At Son at number 9. What is the goal assists? It's like unbelievable. 17
games, 12 goals and 6 assists. I think.
You know what I mean? You can't argue.
No, 5 assists.
You can't argue with those numbers, and also the performance level he puts in. On top of that, yes, it wasn't great against West Ham because he had like 2 or 3 men on him the whole time, and there was literally next to no space, and they handled him really well. But 9 times out of 10, he performed really well in the number 9 position, and I think this weekend will be no different to that. On the left wing, we're going to stick with Timo Werner.
Yeah, got an assist in midweek, albeit does frustrate on occasion, but I really believe he does what Ange wants him to do on that left-hand side, and I think it's important that we have that dual threat again. So I think Werner definitely retains his place.
All right, so that is our predicted lineup for this game against Nottingham Forest this weekend. Let's run through it with you guys one more time. It's Vicario in goal, Pedro Porro right back, Destiny Udogie left back, Van de Ven and Romero in the centre back positions. A midfield 3 of Yves Bissouma, Pape Matar Sarr and James Maddison, with Johnson, Werner and Son in the attacking lineup. So the same lineup as against West Ham, bar Sarr for Rodrigo Bentancur. What is your score prediction?
Yeah, I said 3-1. I do think it's going to be a difficult game. I do think Forest are going to come with a game plan to frustrate us and try and hit us in the spaces that we do inevitably leave, especially in the wide areas where that's where they're very strong in Hudson-Odoi and Elanga. So we've got to make sure that we've got those situations under control. But if we do that, And if also, not just we do that, if we can be a bit more proactive in our attacking play, not just pass it around the penalty area and look for the perfect moment like we did on Tuesday, but actually take more shots on goal, take more efforts. I do think we'll win the game, and I do think our quality will shine through. So I do see a bit of a struggle. It could even be another late show, but I've gone for 3-1.
Yeah, I've gone for 2-0 to Spurs. I feel like we have dealt with teams a lot better defensively of recent times at home. And you look at the Luton game, you look at the Crystal Palace game. Yes, we conceded in both those games, but we didn't give up many chances at all. Crystal Palace scored from a free kick with their only real chance of the game, and Luton scored in the first couple of minutes with they did have a couple of chances, but their only real proper chance of the game they scored in the first few minutes. So I think we can keep out Nottingham Forest this weekend with the likes of Van de Ven back in the team, and he's going to provide a real good kind of answer to the threats that they have on the counter-attack with the likes of Elanga and Hudson-Odoi. Even Hudson-Odoi's on the other side. So I think we'll find joy down the other end with Heung-min Son and Brennan Johnson, a man on form against his old club. So I am going for 2-0 to Tottenham. Let me know your score predictions in the comment section below. That is our predicted lineup to go and beat Nottingham Forest this weekend. But let's move on and let's talk about the match preview, and let's go and look at the form of these two clubs coming into it. Nottingham Forest, obviously, with that points deduction, fighting for their lives, scrapping for their lives at the bottom. A really impressive win last time out against Fulham. Completely blew them away, didn't they, in the opening 20 minutes of the game, going 3-0 up. And yeah, Fulham did come back into the game, but it was nowhere near enough to actually get the scoreline back on level playing terms. But apart from that, they haven't really been playing well and getting points on the board, or consistent points. Yeah,
he had a really good start, didn't he, Nuno? As Wolfie was saying in our match preview with him, they beat Newcastle quite early on, 3-1 away from home at St James's. They then beat Man United 2-1 at home as well, and it looked like, okay, Nuno's seems to be getting a tune out of this team. But then things just took a really bad turn, and they started to really struggle in a lot of games, and struggle for points and struggle for wins especially. And I think after the Man United game, they didn't win another game up until West Ham at home on the 2nd of February, which was about a 2-month wait for another win. And then after the West Ham game, they went on another 6-game winless run, which included 4 defeats. So they've been very, very patchy under Nuno. It hasn't quite been the new manager bounce they've been hoping for. Obviously, when you add into that the 4-point deduction, that's why they see themselves only 3 points above the relegation zone. But as you said, they got a really big morale-boosting win at home to Fulham in midweek. And Wolfie was saying they really did change the way they play in that game, whereas before that, they were much more low block. I mean, they're still going to be low block in this game, but they were much more focused on defending deep, trying to stop the opposition. But against Fulham, they put them under a lot more pressure, forcing a lot more mistakes. And obviously, they blitzed them very early on and actually forced Fulham into a triple change on the 20-minute mark. So I wonder whether they'll take that kind of performance into the Spurs game and look to do a similar thing, or they're going to acknowledge, look, if we're going to stop Spurs, we're going to have to be on point defensively. That means doing things in a different way, and we're going to have to go back to our low block. I think Nuno is a good manager, I think obviously Wolves, he did very well. Spurs didn't work out, but Forest is the kind of club I could see him doing well at. I don't think he's been fantastic so far. Has it been improvement on Steve Cooper? I don't know. It's been quite mixed, I would say. When they've been good, that you could maybe say, it has been an improvement, but I don't think I've seen enough of an improvement yet to suggest that he's going to be at Forest in the long term, but as long as he keeps them up. But I'm looking at Forest and their recent form, and as much as the Fulham result was a good one, there's 2 ways of looking at it. Is it an outlier, or is it a sign of things to come? I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think it's also a different it's a different kind of motivation as well, playing home and away. I think at the City ground with the fans behind them, going 3-0 up so early, it can happen at home for Nottingham Forest, but away from home, I think it's a completely different ball game, and I don't think that result happens at Craven Cottage. You're looking at the results Nottingham Forest have had away from home since Nuno has come in. They've had 1 win. Yes, it was an impressive win at St James's Park against Newcastle, but still, apart from that, that's literally their only win, and that's come quite some time ago, before the turn of the year. So since then, they had I would say a half impressive game against Aston Villa, didn't they? Where Aston Villa kind of blew them away at the start of the game, but they came back into it massively in the second half.
I remember, they were 3-0 down in the first half. and then they got it back to 3-2 really impressively. And in fact, they actually had chances to make it 3-3, and they were on top. Unfortunately, they didn't take those chances, and Aston Villa kind of hit them on the break and made it 4-2. So on a different day, could have been a really great comeback, but if on the flip side, they were also 3-0 down, and Villa kind of stopped playing at 3-0 down. So there's two ways of looking at a result. Obviously, they did put up a fight, but Aston Villa as well exploited what was some really weak defending on the day as well. So definitely shows there's a lot of weakness here in the back line.
But that game also shows that they can be a threat. And with the players that they have, they can open up defences and they can cause you problems, especially with a team that plays a high line like Aston Villa did on that day. So it is, it's not cause for concern, but it's something to watch out for, that's for sure, when coming up against this Aston Villa side this weekend. In terms of the head-to-head, obviously it's massively in favour of Tottenham. Spurs did lose, was that last season, in the Carabao Cup to Nottingham Forest 2-0, but apart from that, we've won 4 out of our last 5 meetings with them. Do you take anything from the game that we did play against them earlier this season?
Well, obviously, it was Steve Cooper's last game, wasn't it? So there's been a lot of change. There's been a lot of change since then. Not even the reason we won that game was the goalkeeper, really. Matt Turner made 2 poor errors, and he's not even the goalkeeper anymore. So it's going to be a different Forest to the Forest that we played back then. Even though I thought, actually, Forest didn't even have a bad game then. I remember we won 2-0 and probably deserved to win, but it wasn't as if we battered them. It was quite a tight game, and we had to pick our moments of quality to win. And obviously, I think if I remember rightly, Basuma got sent off in that game as well, and we finished that game with 10 men. So it was a bit of a struggle near the end of that game to win it. But that did end up being Nuno's last game. It's going to be a different kettle of fish at this point as well. They're a lot more in trouble when it comes to relegation. They're only 3 points clear of the relegation zone. So they're going to be fighting for their lives. They're going to be scrapping for their lives. And we've seen it. How many times we've seen it in this league when a team is in that position and they've got a game you expect them to lose and they end up ripping up the form books and getting a result. So in these kind of games, you can never take them too lightly. You can never be too sure of victory, especially when a team is in that position. But in terms of, the head-to-head, we have a very good record against them, and maybe we can bring that into this game. Yeah,
I hope so. But if you bring up the predicted lineup for Nottingham Forest, this was chosen by our good friend Wolfie. He says Seltz in goal, Williams right back, Aina left back, Murillo and Omadeli at centre backs, Yates, Danilo in the midfield, Gibbs White, Alanga, Hudson-Odoi supporting Chris Wood. I mean, I think that is a definite defence that you can get at, especially with the quality that we have. And I think it's a midfield that we can dominate as much as they are hard-working midfielders. But you look at their attack, and that's actually a really good attack. Alanga is having a really good season. Hudson-Odoi coming into his own a little bit. Gibbs White is, being fancied by a lot of the big clubs this summer, especially with the financial problems that Nottingham Forest are going through. But what I want to talk about is the striker situation, because I remember having a conversation with you and I was saying that Taiwo Awoniyi is a good player. I'll take him at Spurs with what he brings to Nottingham Forest. But Chris Wood has come in and they don't seem to miss him at all. 11 goals this season for Chris Wood, which is an amazing throwback for him.
I think Chris Wood's actually always been a pretty good striker. I think he's one of the only strikers who has 10 Premier League goals in over 5 seasons, I believe. One of the only ones in the league at the moment. So he's always been a decent striker. He's definitely in a rich vein of form at the moment. He's someone we're going to have to be wary of, because when you've got a striker who's such a physical threat like Wood and they're in good form, then they can be very hard to stop. And I think Wood recently, there's been some outrageous finishes in his repertoire recently, especially at one at home to Palace, where he's got the ball, he's facing the ball, the goal is behind him, and it's an impossible angle. He seems to flick it over Dean Henderson, who's standing on his line. He kind of lobs him with a header from a short distance, which I thought was an unreal finish. So when a striker's in that kind of form, you definitely have to be careful about that. We've got to make sure that Romero and Van de Ven are dealing with them. But I do remember, in terms of that front four, I remember watching the Villa game, and I remember before the game they lined up with that front four. And I was actually looking at thinking, okay, because I know Villa play that high line and I know they commit a lot of risk. I was like, okay, Forest actually going to go for this. They're going to attack them. They're going to try and exploit them. And I was like, I think that could lead to a lot of joy. And obviously it did in the second half. But what it cost them was in the first half, they got absolutely blitzed. They just couldn't handle what Villa were flying forward, suffocating Forest, and Forest just couldn't handle Villa's pressing and Villa's intense nature. And because they had four forward-thinking players on the pitch, they didn't have that defensive solidity to deal with it, and they just got completely overrun. Now, if they go in that same front four at Spurs, obviously it was Arioni at Villa and it'll be Wood at Spurs. Are they in danger of the same thing happening early on? Potentially, I think, because I think that front four, they're good individual players and they're good with their ball at the feet. I don't like Hudson-Odoi. How good is he at tracking back? Elanga, how good is he at tracking back? Morgan Gibbs-White, is he going to come and make a midfield three, or is he going to be more of a number 10? These are things that Forest are going to have to deal with. And as well, I look at their team and Nico Williams, Ole Aina on their fullbacks, good fullbacks, but I don't think they're the best defensively, and I definitely think you can run at them for sure. I think Werner against Nico Williams is a good fullback going forward. I don't think he's very good going defensively. He makes a lot of fouls. He gets outpaced a lot. And I can see a team of Werner really take him to the cleaners, I reckon.
Yeah, and Brennan Johnson on the other side as well. I can see him getting a lot of joy. I can see us getting a lot of joy out wide, and maybe that's a good reason why we're saying Johnson instead of Kulusevski as well, with Kulusevski's tendencies to cut inside and play a lot more central to maybe a Brennan Johnson has. I guess that will give us a lot more avenues to attack those wing-backs.
And I'll add to that as well, if that predicted lineup's correct, if they're going to play Ole Aina at left-back, I believe Ole Aina is one of these right-footed, he's a right-footed left-back. He's one of these like a Dallo. He plays natural right-back, but can fill in a left-back as well. And the reason why that could really benefit us is because if he's kind of a right-footed left back and Johnson's going on his outside, he's going down his weaker side. So it's going to be a lot harder for Ole Aina to stop him going on that side. Because a lot of the reason why a lot of the time when wingers are inverted and they're cutting inside, the reason why it's so hard to stop is because a lot of the time they're going on the fullback's weaker side when they cut inside. That's why it's a lot harder for fullbacks who are, let's say, a left-footed left back to stop an inverted winger, is because of that reason. Now Johnson going on the outside of a right-footed left-back could cause a lot of problems for Forest.
Yeah, completely agree. Wolfie was talking to us in the preview saying he thinks Forest are going to win 3-1. Are you surprised by that optimism coming out the Forest fan base?
Well, look, they're just off the back of a really great win, aren't they? So he's still maybe on that high. They haven't won in a while, I guess. So, look, I think he makes good points when it comes to how Forest play. They're gonna see us coming. They're gonna know exactly how we're gonna play, and they're gonna set up to frustrate us. And they do have. Let's be honest, they do have the tools in Gibbs White, Elanga. They do have the tools to hurt us if we are giving the ball away too often. If we're allowing too many transitions, if we're off our game, then Forest definitely have the tools to hurt us. And if you give a team like Forest the advantage, you give them a 1-goal lead or something, they're going to be much more likely to hang on to it than a team like Luton are, in my opinion. So we've got to be very careful when it comes to this game. And they got good players, as you said, out front four. They can give a lot of teams a go with the way they attack. So I'm not surprised that from a tactical standpoint, he can see Forest trying to exploit Spurs. And he also, given how Spurs have sometimes struggled to break down low blocks, like against West Ham on Tuesday, from that point of view, I can see why he's thinking if we can kind of do what West Ham did and kind of be a bit more clinical on the counter, then we can win this game. I don't think he's taking into account home advantage. I think home advantage is a big factor. I think at home recently we've been very good, and we're a bit more relentless at home. We're a bit more aggressive at home. We seem to kind of will the ball into the back of the net. And how many times we found late winners at home recently? So
all season, really, yeah.
All season, but especially the last few home games, Brighton, Luton. We've found quite a few. So I think I do think we'll win. I'm hoping we don't give Forest too much encouragement. I hope we really just suffocate them and just go for the throat and get some really early goals. I know football's not always like that, but I've got a feeling sometimes in these games when a team comes out to frustrate you, sometimes you could just blitz them and they don't know where to look, kind of thing, and you can be 2 goals up before they even know it and their game plan's out the window.
Yeah.
That's what I'm kind of hoping for, obviously. But the longer the game is at 0-0, obviously the more encouragement that's going to give Forest and the more it's going to play into their hands. But I am confident with our first choice back line, with the form that Johnson's in and Son is in, that we should be okay in this game.
Yeah, and you're looking at the West Ham game, and that is definitely maybe what we tried to do. Opening 20 minutes, we were all over them. We got that early goal, and if we would have got that second goal, I think it would have been obviously a much different game than the way it panned out to be. But that was kind of like the outlier, because you're looking at our previous games before that. We haven't really created too much in first halves, and then we have to rely, like you're saying, on late goals, and it gets frustrating towards the end of games. So I think it's so important to take that same mentality that we started the game with the West Ham, like we did at West Ham, and really just go for their throats early on and try get those early goals. And I think we can. There's no reason why we can't. There's no reason why we can't go out in this game and really stamp our authority early. But having said that, I say that pretty much every home game, and it doesn't seem to work out that way.
And we seem to do better when we are 1-0 down, to be honest. So it's funny how things play out like that. But obviously it's a massive game when it comes to in the top four. Obviously Villa will have played before us, so we'll have to see what their result is. Hopefully we'll have a chance to go above them with the win, but might not necessarily be as simple as that. We might need to win just to keep pace with them, which would put a bit more pressure on us. But obviously, as Ange is saying, he said in his press conference, the most important thing is he sees progression in the team. He sees the team adding consistency to their game, and really what he sees is improvement in how we're playing, how we're taking to teams, how we're keeping the ball, all these different things. And I think that's obviously what a lot of fans are going to be looking out for. I think our home form of late has been pretty good. Obviously we lost to Wolves, but I think other than that we've won most our home games recently, especially in the league. I think the Wolves one, that's one defeat I can see here, in 6 or 7 even. I think we've won 9 of our last 10, it looks like, here at home. So we're in very good form at home. I think home advantage makes a big difference, and I think that is what is going to make this game a bit more comfortable, I feel. Yeah,
you look at that home form, and we had 3 losses on the bounce, didn't we, at home, around, what was it, November time?
Yeah.
Or December time, November, December. And that's when we were just had those injury problems. So if you take the injury problem thing out of it, we're a very good home side this year. And those 3 defeats probably don't happen. So it was very frustrating. And even in those 3 defeats, West Ham, it was 2 horrible mistakes that lost us that game. Aston Villa, we should have been clear after the first 20 minutes, and that should have been a win. And the Chelsea game, obviously, that was the game where everything went wrong. But we started the game so well, and if it's 11v11, we probably win that game as well. So I think for the most part, we have been really good at home and really consistent at home this season from a performance level as well. So I hope we take that into this game, and I'm fully expecting us to take it into this game. I just think maybe it's not going to be as easy as maybe some people think, but I do think we get the 3 points.
Yeah, and I as I say, I wouldn't be surprised if it's another late show. I wouldn't be surprised if Villa, if Forest do somehow, with Elanga and Gibbs-White, are able to muster up some chances and put us under pressure and do get a goal against run of play and do get a counter attack, and we do fall behind. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. But I do think with our home form at the moment, the way we're playing at home, the way we're putting teams under pressure, and how relentless we've been, and as well, if things aren't working, you've got players like Kulusevski, Lo Celso on the bench. Obviously no Richie, but you've got a few attackers on the bench to come on and try and change the game and give you that extra bit of energy as well. So I think we're going to have the tools to get over the line, but we just got to make sure we don't take this game lightly, because Forest definitely have the tools to hurt us and the tools to get something out of this game.
Yep, and tomorrow is, Sunday is just so imperative to get the result when you're looking at our fixtures after this. Because look, no disrespect to Nottingham Forest, I know they're not a terrible side, but they are fighting relegation. That's where they are in the league, and they're there for a reason, not just the points deduction, but they're be in and around that point, part of the league for a reason, right? We've got Nottingham Forest now at home, which most would, if you do your predictions outside of Tottenham and Nottingham Forest, would say Tottenham are going to win the game. After this, we've got Newcastle away, Arsenal at home, Chelsea away, Liverpool away. So we go through a run of really, really difficult games now after this. So it's imperative to get these 3 points in terms of this top 4 race.
Yeah, 100% right. And with the games not going any easier, we have to take these opportunities, especially a home game against 17th place. You have to win that game, because there's no guarantees going forward where the points are going to come from, with the difficulty of the fixture list starting to really hit us after this game. So definitely we have to get 3 points, and if we end up losing and Villa do get something at home to Brentford, then all of a sudden, with the fixtures we got coming up, you're thinking top four's looking all of a sudden like distant.
Yeah, if we lose this game, I think Villa turn favourites in the top four race. I really do. That's how much of a swing this weekend can be with the fixtures that Spurs have coming up. But look, that is our match preview. Let me know in the comment section below your thoughts on the game. Sim is going 3-1 to Spurs. I'm going 2-0 to Spurs. Me and Sim, once again, will be in that stadium on Sunday, getting you all the footage from inside. And I think it's Barnaby and Amir, is it, this weekend?
Yeah.
Once again, sir. Amir, bring 3 points. He doesn't have a good record in the studio, but hopefully this weekend is a turn for the form books. But thank you everyone for joining us today. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always, come on you Spurs.